HMS Upholder, the story of a heroic submarine. The story of HMS Upholder is a legendary tale of bravery, audacity, and relentless success in the face of daunting odds during her short but extraordinarily impactful career. Her operational record during the Second World War, under the command of Lieutenant Commander Malcolm David Wanklyn, VC, DSO, and Two Bars, places her among the most successful submarines in the history of naval warfare. This narrative is sponsored by Polly Speaks For You. At Polly Speaks For You, we are driven by a passion for empowering individuals, particularly those with disabilities or learning challenges, through innovative text-to-speech and voice recognition technology. Polly Speaks For You is more than just software. It's a lifeline that bridges the gap, enabling people to express themselves and connect with the world in impactful ways. By merging the richness of history with cutting-edge technology, Polly Speaks For You shows how every voice, whether preserving the past or shaping the future, has the power to inspire. And now, back to the story. Early patrols and learning the Mediterranean. Upholder was commissioned in August 1940 and immediately assigned to the 10th Submarine Flotilla, based out of Malta. The strategic importance of Malta, sitting astride vital Axis supply routes between Italy and North Africa, made it a crucial base for Allied submarines. From here, Upholder would begin her deadly campaign against Axis shipping, severely hampering Rommel's North African supply lines and playing a key role in the war in the Mediterranean. Her first patrols, though relatively uneventful compared to later successes, gave the crew valuable experience in the region's dangerous waters. They learned to operate in a high-risk environment, with constant threats from Axis air patrols and mines. The attack on Conte Rosso, May 24, 1941. Perhaps the most famous action in Upholder's career occurred on May 24, 1941, when Lieutenant Commander Wanklyn led her in an attack that would earn him the Victoria Cross. The Conte Rosso was a large Italian ocean liner, converted into a troop ship, transporting over 2,000 soldiers across the Mediterranean to North Africa. Upholder was on patrol off Sicily when Wanklyn spotted the Italian convoy. Despite the heavy escort of destroyers and a persistent swell that made an accurate attack difficult, Wanklyn decided to risk engaging. Surfacing intermittently to gauge the situation and carefully positioning the submarine for a shot, Wanklyn unleashed 3 torpedoes at the Conte Rosso. 2 struck the ship, causing catastrophic damage. The liner went down quickly, taking with it hundreds of troops. Wanklyn, knowing that the enemy escort ships would respond swiftly and violently, expertly maneuvered Upholder away from the scene before they could detect her. Although the convoy's escorts launched a barrage of depth charges, Upholder remained undetected and made it back to Malta safely. The sinking of Conte Rosso was a significant blow to the Axis, and the Admiralty immediately recognized Wanklyn's bravery and skill, awarding him the Victoria Cross, the highest military honor in the British Armed Forces. Relentless pursuit of Axis convoys, mid-1941. Following her success with Conte Rosso, Upholder continued to wreak havoc on Axis convoys, supplying Rommel's Afrika Korps. With Wanklyn at the helm, the submarine engaged in multiple daring attacks throughout 1941, sinking over 90,000 tons of enemy shipping in the process. One notable action occurred on July 27, 1941, when Upholder attacked and sank the Italian transport Maddalena, another troop ship. This strike demonstrated Wanklyn's growing reputation for his ability to approach undetected, launch devastating torpedo strikes, and escape under heavy attack. The Maddalena was part of a convoy that included several heavily armed warships. Yet Wanklyn showed his usual disregard for the odds, slipping into position and firing his torpedoes before making a clean getaway. The continued success of Upholder placed her firmly on the radar of Axis naval forces. Desperately needing to secure their supply lines to North Africa, the Italians increased their convoy escorts and began laying more mines and deploying aircraft in an effort to neutralize the British submarines operating out of Malta. Despite this, Upholder and her crew seemed unstoppable. The sinking of Leverkusen and Oslofjord, September 1941. In September 1941, Wanklyn and Upholder carried out a textbook ambush of the German tanker Leverkusen and the Norwegian freighter Oslofjord, both carrying crucial fuel supplies for Rommel's forces. The two ships were part of a convoy sailing from Italy to North Africa. Wanklyn stalked the convoy for several hours, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. At night, Upholder surfaced and closed the distance to the convoy, then fired a spread of torpedoes. Both the Leverkusen and the Oslofjord were hit, and both quickly sank. The loss of fuel carried by these ships further strained Axis supply lines, already stretched thin by the Royal Navy's blockade. This attack was yet another success in Wanklyn's campaign of attrition against Rommel's forces. The combination of stealth, precision, and daring was beginning to define Upholder's operations. By the end of 1941, the submarine had become one of the most effective weapons the Royal Navy had in the Mediterranean. The torpedoing of Duisburg convoy, November 8th to 9th, 1941. The Duisburg convoy, one of the largest Axis convoys in the Mediterranean, was another testament to the fearlessness of Upholder and her crew. This convoy, heavily escorted by Italian warships, was transporting vital supplies to North Africa. Wanklyn, patrolling in the region with other submarines, spotted the convoy and moved into attack position. On the night of November 8th to 9th, 1941, Wanklyn coordinated with other British submarines and attacked the convoy, firing torpedoes at the escorting Italian cruiser Trieste. Although Trieste survived the attack, Wanklyn's torpedoes contributed to the chaos that led to the eventual sinking of the convoy's merchant ships by surface forces, including HMS Aurora and HMS Penelope. The sinking of the Duisburg convoy was a massive blow to Axis supply efforts in North Africa. Final patrol and ultimate sacrifice, April 1942. Upholder's 25th patrol, undertaken in April 1942, would be her last. By this time, she had become legendary, not just in Malta, but throughout the Royal Navy. Her crew, though wearied by constant action, remained a close-knit, determined group, following their commander with unwavering trust. On April 6, 1942, Upholder sailed from Malta on what was to be a routine patrol in the Sicilian Channel. Her mission was to intercept and disrupt Axis supply convoys. At some point after April 12th, Upholder was lost with all hands. It is believed she was sunk by depth charges from the Italian torpedo boat Pegaso, though some theories suggest she may have struck a mine. The loss of Upholder and her crew was a devastating blow to the Royal Navy, but their legacy endured. Wanklyn and his men had carried out their duty with unparalleled courage, and their example inspired future generations of submariners. Legacy and conclusion. In less than 2 years, HMS Upholder sank over 93,000 tons of enemy shipping, including some of the most vital Axis supply vessels. Her daring actions and Wanklyn's calm leadership left a lasting impression on the Royal Navy and the broader war effort. Lieutenant Commander Malcolm David Wanklyn was posthumously awarded the Distinguished Service Order with 2 bars, in addition to his Victoria Cross. His dedication and that of his crew, encapsulated in their motto, "Without fear," continues to be remembered in naval circles to this day. The loss of Upholder marked the end of an extraordinary chapter in the submarine war in the Mediterranean, but the legend of her service lives on, representing the very best of the Royal Navy's fighting spirit. Malta and the deadly risks taken in the Mediterranean theater. The Admiralty's special mention. In August 1942, when the Admiralty announced the loss of Upholder, an extraordinary tribute was made, singling out the submarine's service and the bravery of her crew. This was an unusual gesture, as the Admiralty seldom made public distinctions between different acts of naval service. The communiqué read, "It is seldom proper for their lordships to draw distinction between different services rendered in the course of naval duty, but they take this opportunity of singling out those of HMS Upholder, under the command of Lieutenant Commander David Wanklyn, for special mention. She was long employed against enemy communications in the central Mediterranean, and she became noted for the uniformly high quality of her services in that arduous and dangerous duty. Such was the standard of skill and daring set by Lieutenant Commander Wanklyn and the officers and men under him, that they and their ship became an inspiration not only to their own flotilla, but to the fleet of which it was a part, and to Malta, where for so long HMS Upholder was based. The ship and her company are gone, but the example and inspiration remain. This message, extraordinary in its tone and reverence, highlighted the impact Upholder and her crew had on morale, not just for the Royal Navy, but for the beleaguered island of Malta, which was under constant Axis bombardment and siege. Wanklyn's Victoria Cross and radio messages. Lieutenant Commander Wanklyn's daring exploits were often accompanied by brief, professional radio transmissions to his superiors, masking the incredible risks he and his crew undertook. One such radio exchange occurred during the patrol that earned him the Victoria Cross, after he attacked the Italian troopship Conte Rosso. Wanklyn, after locating the convoy in the heavily defended waters of the Mediterranean, attacked under difficult conditions. The Conte Rosso, an Italian liner of nearly 18,000 tons carrying over 2,000 troops, was struck by torpedoes from Upholder, causing it to sink rapidly. After the attack, Wanklyn sent a typically modest radio message. Enemy convoy attacked. One troopship sunk. Returning to base. This understatement concealed the dramatic and perilous nature of the encounter, where Upholder faced depth charges and aggressive counterattacks, but managed to escape unscathed. The final patrol and last orders. Upholder embarked on what was to be her final patrol on April 6, 1942. This mission was to be her 25th patrol, and after its completion, the submarine and her crew were to return to England. The crew, weary from constant action but resolute in their duty, remained focused on their mission, intercepting Axis convoys. On April 12th, Upholder received a message from the Admiralty, instructing her to form a patrol line with HMS Urge and HMS Thrasher to intercept the convoy. The waters they were patrolling were some of the most dangerous in the Mediterranean, heavily mined and patrolled by enemy aircraft and warships. Form patrol line with HMS Urge and Thrasher. Intercept convoy in grid 34°47 N 15°55. It remains uncertain if Upholder ever received this signal, as she became overdue on April 14th and never returned to base. Memories of bravery and inspiration. The exact circumstances of Upholder's loss remain a mystery. Whether she fell victim to depth charges dropped by the Italian torpedo boat Pegaso or was sunk by a mine, her fate became a poignant moment for the Royal Navy. In subsequent years, those who had served with Wanklyn and remembered the crew spoke of the intense camaraderie and professionalism that defined Upholder. One anecdote recounted by a fellow submarine officer highlighted Wanklyn's calm under pressure. During a particularly dangerous patrol, after being depth charged for hours, Wanklyn turned to his officers with a smile and said, "Well, that was close, but we've seen worse, haven't we?" This nonchalant attitude in the face of danger typified Wanklyn's leadership and the loyalty he inspired in his men. If you're enjoying this story, please remember to hit like, share, and subscribe. Your support helps us continue creating content that educates and empowers. To learn more about South Africa's leading accessibility software and to support our dyslexic-friendly initiative, visit www.polispeaks4u.co.za. Thank you for watching, and